guys, I'm madisonmarybooks and welcome back to my channel. Today I have my very late August wrap up for you guys. So in the month of August I read a total of 8 books. 7 of those are physical and one of them was an ebook. Out of these 8 books, 7 of them were fantasy and one of them was romance smut. Can you guess which one I read on the Kindle, guys? Age range what? Age range what? Age range right. Okay. Age range wise, I read 1 middle grade, 4 YA, and 3 adult books. And now my favorite statistic is the fact that I read, get ready, a total of 3,328 pages. Yeah. Not as much as I read last month, but still pretty damn solid because I was slumpy for like a week in there. So if you're new here, what I do is I start with my lowest star rating and I go up until I reach my highest star rating. Fun fact, this month I have a bunch of 5-star reads, so August was pretty damn solid for me. I haven't looked at all my stats yet, but I think August is the most 5-star reads I've read in 1 month, which is pretty darn awesome, guys. So without further ado, let's get started. The lowest rated read I read this month was Treason of Thorns by ɪ Weymouth. I originally read an arc of this book and then I got sent a finished copy. It is a beautiful, beautiful book, but I gave Treason of Thorns 3 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed it. It was just nothing really too special for me. This is my first ɪ Weymouth book that I have read. So it's about Violet, and in this land there are these things called the Great Houses, and each of these houses is run by a caretaker and their family, and they worked with the house and the house's magic to keep the lands plentiful and well and the livestock all good and just bring wealth to the area. So what happens is 7 years ago, Violet's father committed high treason by trying to free his house from the king's rule. And as a result, he was sentenced to death and Violet had to live in exile. 7 years later, her father has died and she is returning back to the Burley house, her family's house, in order to try and save it, because currently the magic is becoming polluted and it is seeping into the lands and actually destroying it. And the king has given Violet one last chance to save Burley House or else he will burn it down. So this was a really cool book. I think that my favorite thing about it was how Laura managed to create such a eerie atmosphere for this story. It was such a vivid book where you could imagine everything. I loved how she personified this house. This house had feelings and emotions, and the way that Violet and the house interacted emotionally was just so interesting and so special, and it was probably my favorite part of this whole book. I also do love the king's daughter in this. She was really fun and was probably my favorite character out of them all, because as much as I enjoyed these characters, they were still never very well fleshed out. Honestly, I think the house was the most fleshed out, which kind of tells you a lot. I also was just never fully invested in this story. I never really cared too much about what was happening, and I was kind of just along for the ride, just enjoying pretty prose. So there's my thoughts on Treason of Thorns. The next book is Beasts of the Frozen Sun by Jill Criswell. This is the first book in a trilogy. And this is an arc that I received at BEA, and I actually got it signed by Jill, and it was really sweet. I really enjoyed this. It was just slow. And that's the reason why I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. This book had a lot of potential to be 4 stars, but the plot just never went anywhere until like the very end, and that was quite frustrating for me. So in Beasts of the Frozen Sun, we follow Lyra, and she is a god-gifted daughter of Illyria. And what that means is in this world there are certain women who have special powers, and Lyra's power is that when she touches someone she can pretty much read their emotions, their minds, their memories, everything about them. However, one day Lyra comes across a horde of dead raiders on the shoreline. One of them actually is still alive, barely, and she recognizes him as this boy who saved her from her childhood. So even though he's from the enemy clan, she decides to sneak him off into a desolated cabin and nurses him back to health. And Lyra and Riker kind of start this star-crossed lovers romance. So I really appreciated the relationship between Lyra and Riker. I appreciated Lyra her story arc in this book was really impressive, because she started out as this girl who was constantly taken advantage of, and as the story went on, you kind of saw her begin to take her life into her own hands and do what she wanted and what she believed was right, and kind of started to stand up for herself. What was really bothersome is because Lyra and Riker are from two different clans, they speak completely different languages. So for a majority of this book, the two of them can't even properly communicate unless she's like touching him and invading his memories and like mind speaking to him. So it was very frustrating because you had these two characters that for half the novel are interacting and can't even properly understand each other. It was frustrating. Not even that, but for around 70% of the novel, nothing really happens. They're just she's nursing him back to health, and her clan is kind of going through a rebellion. And so there's a lot going on with her personally, but this whole time you had this impending doom of Riker's clan like coming in and raiding them. But it's just a lot of talk. There's no doing. It's just nothing happens. And it's frustrating until like the very end when things start popping up and Lyra becomes pretty dang badass. And then the story ends and you're just like, what? And also what I thought was really good was it really questioned morality and the idea of there are no good sides in a war. You know, Lyra's clan seems like it'd be the good side to start off with, but as time goes on, you kind of see that it itself is becoming corrupt, and that in this world, the gods, because this is a very god-driven world with like all these different gods, like Lyra is a god-gifted daughter of ɪṛ, and how they're messing with mortals and how mortals get caught up in a god-centric war. And I like that aspect of it, and because of that, it got like an extra 0.5 rather than just being an okay 3-star book. It's definitely a 3.5 because the world building is really solid. And I loved the idea of mortals being stuck in a god war, and that ended up with both sides of the mortals kind of both being equally bad. And Lyra is kind of stuck in between being this beacon that doesn't know what to do. The next book I read that I rated 3.5 stars is Gideon the Ninth by Tamsyn Muir. I had really high expectations for this. I thought going into this that I would be giving it a 5 out of 5 stars, no doubt. And then I started it and I was like, oh my god, what is this? So Gideon the Ninth follows Gideon, who is on the cover here. I suggest that if you have this book, really look at the cover because it's badass. Like, this is a stellar cover in my opinion. But what happens is that in this world you have 8 houses. Actually, ready for this? I'm so smart. We have 8 houses. So the first house is the Emperor's house, and that's kind of like the royal house. And then we have the second house. And the second house is the militant strength. We have the third house, which is kind of about rumors and gossip and that kind of stuff. We then have the fourth house, which is the vanguard. We then have the fifth house, which are kind of the tradition and the depths of the land. We then have the sixth house, which is all about knowledge. We have the seventh house, which is kind of more of a positive house. We have the eighth house, which is kind of like judgment. And we then have the ninth house, which is tasked with looking after the tomb and pretty much mostly the dead. But everything's dead, kind of. They have like the most connection with the dead in the necromantic ways. So in this world, each house has a necromancer, which is like the main, biggest, head honcho, powerful person. And each necromancer has a cavalier, which is like their swordsman. And what happens is when this book starts off, the emperor enforces the lictor trials. And the lictor trials is when the head necromancer and cavalier from each house goes to Canaan, and they kind of have these trials to unlock being a lictor, and if they do that, then they will become one of the emperor's like necromancers and cavalier. Like they'll be like the top of the top, best of the best. And with this book, Harahak is our necromancer of the ninth house. However, her house is kind of in ruin secretly. No one knows that the ninth house is kind of slowly falling apart. And so when the lictor trials come up, she decides to take it as an opportunity to save her house. But she needs a cavalier, and her cavalier that she was originally assigned is a bit of a wuss and a baby. So she ends up taking in Gideon. And Gideon is kind of like a servant of the ninth house, and she's one of the only few people there who are actually alive. And she doesn't want anything to do with the ninth house. She hates the ninth house and has been wanting to get off it for years. So when given this opportunity, she takes it. However, these trials are not what they appear. When all 8 houses get to Canaan House, they find that the lich trials are very ominous. They don't really know what's going on. It seems like there's another presence going and people start dying. The reason why this book is 3.5 stars is because it almost put me in a slump. And the reason why it almost put me in a slump is just because it is very confusing. You are just info dumped to the max and nothing is ever properly explained. Thank God in the beginning there is an explanation of who everyone is and what house they are and if they're a necromancer or a cavalier, because there are so many names in this. You have 16 names going at all times and it gets very, very confusing. And I was just constantly reading this and skimming over descriptions. There was just too much going on in this book that I found myself having a hard time really getting into it and getting invested. I liked the atmosphere that it created. I loved the idea of the lich trials, of all these like really creepy like necromantic magic going on. Like that was my favorite part of it, was especially watching Harrow and her magic, because she's a very, very powerful necromancer and she's kind of like our second main character of this book. This book is told to be lesbian necromancers in space, which is true and also false. The lesbian part of this is there, but it's not as prominent as you would expect. You understand that a lot of the people in this world are bisexual, gay, vice versa, anything like that. It's not like explicitly said, like labeled wise, but a lot of the time you see that Gideon has this girl crush on this other necromancer female, and that's kind of the main like lesbian storyline, which is why this other romance that occurs, especially towards the end, really threw me off, because I personally, like there are some people out there who think this romance was very well built up. I didn't get it. I thought the romantic part of it was kind of rushed. I think that by the end of the book, they had more of this like amicable, really close relationship that could have then delved into being a romance in the second book. But the romance was kind of shoved into the end of this book and I didn't like that aspect of it. One of the best things about this is that it was very messed up and very dark, and there were so many things that happened in this that you were just like, oh my god, are you serious right now? Like, the magic in this is just so messed up and the trials are so awful and I loved it. Like, I'm such a fan of like gruesome horror things that happen in books, so that's a reason why I was 100% a fan of that kind of stuff. So this had a lot of potential. I'm actually super, super, super excited for the second book because it's going to be from Harrow, and I love Harrow Hark so much. Like, she was in the beginning of this book someone who I wasn't sure if I was gonna like her, and then as the book went on, I was like, oh my god, I love her. Like, Gideon was okay, but the whole time, Gideon just felt like a bystander for this storyline. It felt like she was just there to be a narrator of what was going on. And while I loved the crass and crudeness of this book, there were a couple times where I was just like, like, is this really the, like, it felt like the comedic reliefs were not always very well timed. It's good, it just takes a while to really understand what was going on, and it's definitely a book that would be better its second time around because you would have a better grip on the world and what was going on, because I found myself getting lost in the plot because I was trying to figure out the world building. But yes, that is my 3.5 read of Gideon the Ninth. The next book I have to talk about is pretty quick, and that's a 4 out of 5 star read, and that is going to be The Titan's Curse by Riordan. This is book 3 of the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series. I am currently buddy reading this series with Soleil over the little reader's corner, who I love so much. Anyway, third book in the series, most depressing book in the series in my opinion, because we have 2 character deaths in this that just rip my heart out. However, we do get introduced to one of my favorite characters in the series, and that is Nico D'Angelo, and I absolutely adored that, and I'm just so excited to keep on going with the series because the 4th and 5th book are probably my favorite. It is a nostalgic read for me and I am just obsessed, and I cannot wait to get to the 4th book this month. Now we are getting to my 5-star reads, and I have 4 of them to talk to you guys about. So the first 5-star read I'm going to talk to you guys about is Well Met by Jen DeLuca. This was my 1 ebook of the month. So this book is pretty much coined as a Ren Fair romance. That's a Renaissance fair. And we follow Emily. Emily recently had a really bad breakup with her boyfriend, and her sister was also recently in a car accident. As a result, Emily has decided to move in with her sister for the summer to help look after her and also her niece. However, Emily's niece wants to take part in the Ren Fair, so when Emily goes to sign her up, she finds out that she needs a chaperone. So Emily gets stuck with having to volunteer as well, and in a last minute decision, she decides that, nah, screw it, I'll be a tavern wench. However, at the same time, she meets Simon, who is the coordinator of this Ren Fair. Emily is not very serious about the Ren Fair, and Simon is super duper serious. So the two of them clash instantly, and we have a hate to love romance. Oh my god, I love this book so freaking much. You see Emily and Simon, who really hate each other, and then once they get into the Ren Fair and they have their Ren Fair personas, the tavern wench and Simon's persona, end up kind of having a fling marriage kind of a deal. And so the two of them, whenever they're actually at the Ren Fair, have to pretend to like each other. And through that, their Ren Fair personas start to really flirt, and they're quite steamy flirting that you really love. And then through that, their Ren Fair romance kind of starts to seep into their actual lives, and Emily and Simon begin to become friends and then lovers, and it is so beautiful. I love it a lot because Emily is such a relatable character. She is very unsure of herself, but also very feisty. She has been hurt a lot in the past, so she's very wary about the people that she surrounds herself with, and she just feels like she doesn't know what's happening, and she's very low on self-confidence at the moment, and the book shows you how she kind of gets her confidence back, how she begins to learn this new life, and it's just such a beautiful character arc that is done in a very short amount of time, and I'm very, very impressed with that. I also think that I love the consensual, beautiful romance that blossomed between Emily and Simon. I think that it was very healthy, and even though they had their own flaws, they kind of helped each other overcome those flaws. I also love the Ren Fair aspect. I've never been to a Renaissance fair before, and oh my god, do I want to go now or what? Oh my god, it was just such an easy 5-star read for me. I was always laughing. Every single one of the characters is very well fleshed out, even the side characters. And we have recently found out that there is actually going to be a sequel in this book following one of the side characters, which makes me even more excited for the sequel. So I'm just like, oh my god, this book is amazing. Please pick it up. It is definitely one of my top books of 2019, especially in the romance smut genre, because the smut is there, but it's definitely on like the lighter side compared to a lot of other books that I tend to read, but it is definitely heavier than other books like, I'd say the smut in this is actually heavier than The Hating Game, if you guys have read that before, just to give you guys a bit of a know about that. So the next 5-star book I'm going to talk to you guys about is not going to come as a surprise to anyone, because I have a reading vlog where I like exploded internally from my love for this book, and that is There Will Come a Darkness by Katy Rose Poole. Oh my god, I love this book. So what happened was 100 years ago, the 7 prophets of this world suddenly disappeared. But before they disappeared, they left one final prophecy saying that in the next couple of 100-ish years, a new prophet would be born, and that this prophet would either be the savior of the Age of Darkness or will be the impending doom of the Age of Darkness. And so we follow 5 point of views, 5 main characters, and those are going to be Etheria, who is known as the Pale Hand. Her power allows her to kill people with her touch. We have Beru, who is Etheria's sister, and she is currently dying of a sickness. We have Anton, who is a boy running from his past and is very good at gambling. We have Hassan, who is a crown prince of Herat, which is a kingdom that has recently been overtaken by the Hierophant. And then we have Jude, who is the Keeper of the Word. He is basically part of the clan that are the last followers of the prophets and the keepers of the prophecy. This book is amazing. There was so much going on and so many plot twists. I was constantly guessing, especially once you get a prophecy. Of course, you're going to spend the entire book looking at the prophecy, trying to nitpick it and figure out if you can decide what the actual things that are going to happen are. And I was just so shocked throughout this by all the plot twists that were thrown at me. It left me at night to the point that I couldn't sleep because I could only think of this book, but then I couldn't read the book because my mind was just going at like 1,000,000 miles an hour, that I couldn't even read the book because my brain was running faster than it could comprehend what was going on the page. So I'd have to put it down, and I was just in this constant state of turmoil being like, this book. and just going crazy from it. It was crazy. Oh my god. I really enjoyed that Katy Rose Poole didn't shy away in this book from the fact that sometimes the choices you make are selfish and sometimes you have to do what's right for you despite what it means for everyone else around you. And I like how she showed that sometimes society is wrong at its core and that there are a lot of things that aren't inherently good and that you yourself can't always be inherently good and that you have to make the tough choices. I also loved how I had so many different feelings towards these characters. There were some characters in the beginning that I didn't love that much that by the end I have decided I'm like my precious, precious children. Jude is a character that in the beginning I was like, he's not the strongest character. And then the book ends and I was like, oh my god, he is my child. I will protect him at all costs. This is 5,000% a book that is 5 stars, but emotionally left me heartbroken. This book, all your characters just get destroyed. Katy Rose Poole does not shy away from just destroying your characters. Even if they're the main characters, she doesn't care. She's gonna give them, like, she's gonna make them fall down a hole and tell them, you gotta crawl back up yourself if you wanna save everything. Because she ain't giving them a hand. In fact, she's the one who keeps digging further down the hole so they, like, have a tougher and tougher time getting out of it because they make decisions, sometimes good, sometimes bad, but regardless, they still end up in a shitty position. I don't know what to expect from this series and I'm so scared and so excited at the same time and life. Okay, so the next book I have to talk to you guys about is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. A lot of people, including yourselves, are probably wondering about my thoughts on this and all that jazz. Let me tell you guys, 1 week from when this goes up, I actually have an entire vlog dedicated to this book and all the amazing tabs that I have in it. So I'm not going to give you guys too much of my opinions right now, but regardless, I will tell you what this is about because I feel like it's very misconstrued about this book and the trigger warnings in it and what it really is at its core. And I definitely think this will be a polarizing book. People will either love it or they will think it's eh. So I'm definitely someone who loved it. This book is about Alex Stern and she is the sole survivor of a triple homicide. And what happens is this man comes to her and offers her a scholarship to Yale and says, will you come to Yale and be a part of the Leith Society? And Leith House is this secret society in Yale that looks after the other secret societies to make sure that they all stay in check. And each of these societies kind of doubles in this sort of black magic. And the reason why they have recruited Alex is because ever since she was young, she has been able to see ghosts. And because she can see them without taking this special drug, they need her and they want her to help them kind of control the magic going on at Yale. The thing is we have a murder that has also occurred, and when this book starts off, the other main character has gone missing. So you're kind of going back and forth between when Alex first gets to Yale and she is under the care of Darlington, Daniel Arlington, my babe, my ultimate love, the boy who was probably my new BFF of the year. I'm in love with him. That's beyond the point. After Darlington's disappearance, which is from Alex's POV, and then you get a couple chapters of present day, and also when Alex has flashbacks to her life prior to the triple homicide, which sounds very confusing right now to you guys, but I swear it's not confusing when you're reading it. But there are a lot of people who have said there are different triggers. I marked in this book as I was reading it with green every time that something was potentially triggering. So what there is in this book is that you have ritualistic cutting because you have blood magic that occurs. They require blood to have this spell to work. It's not very graphic and it didn't bother me, and it hasn't bothered other people who also kind of can be a bit aversive to that kind of stuff. There is suicide in the sense of ritualistic suicide. One of our characters purposely dies so that they can travel to the other side and have a conversation with someone and then be brought back into their body and like brought back to life. We do have sexual assault and rape, and those are probably the biggest triggers in this book, is that we have a lot of, there's 2 instances of sexual assault, rape. And then we also have a lot of drug abuse, alcohol abuse, substance abuse in general. I would say substance abuse is probably the biggest trigger in this book, just because it is very prominent and is everywhere. But otherwise, those are kind of the main triggers in my opinion. There is one instance of fecal consumption. And it sounds gross, and it sounds weird right now, and it is gross when you read it, but at the same time, it is probably one of my most favorite scenes because it is really badass. And that sounds so weird, and I know that it sounds really weird, but I swear it's not that weird. But I loved this book. I think that the whole idea of these secret societies and how they work was so interesting. Alex and Darlington were two amazing main characters, and you just fell in love with them instantly. They were some of the most fleshed out characters I have ever met. And Alex just has a lot of PTSD that she is trying to deal with from her childhood and growing up, and how she deals with everything. And it tugs at your core. And she's just such an amazing character who is just learned time and time again to put herself first. She's a survivor, and she has a survivor's instinct, and she will always save herself before anyone else. And it is something that I actually very much respect in a sense, and something that I really did enjoy about this book. And then we have Darlington, who himself has a very tragic backstory, and I fell in love with him quite instantly. I was consistently looking forward to his chapters, and I wanted to know more of him, and I was consistently distraught that he was missing. And this book, at the very end, there were just so many plot twists, and you thought you knew about the mystery and this death that had happened. You thought you knew who was the cause of this murder. You thought you knew about these secret societies, and then Leigh Bardugo would turn it all back on you, and you'd be like, wait, what, it's this? And then it would turn again, and you're like, wait, what, it's that? And then it would turn again. You're like, oh my god, what is happening? And this book ends, and I was like yearning, screaming for more. I wasn't actually, but like I needed the next book. The way that this ends, oh my god, I need the next book now. Like the next book, I don't know how it's possible, but I'm gonna love it more than this one. I can already tell you that now. The second book is gonna be like a 5.5 out of 5 stars. Is that mathematically possible? Not really, but that's beyond the point because those are my thoughts. Okay, we have the last book now. Are we ready for this? Are you guys ready to see what the last book is? Serpent and Dove by Shelby Mahurin. Oh my god. This book blew me away. Such an easy 5 out of 5 stars. Like, not even going to like, there's no way. I can't see how anyone who reads this wouldn't give it a 5 out of 5 stars because it is amazing. We follow Lou, who is Louise LeBlanc, and she is part of the witch coven Les Armes Blanches, and 2 years prior she fled her coven, and she has been hiding in plain sight ever since as a thief. We also follow Reed, who is a witch hunter, and he has devoted his whole life to the church and to bringing down witches. However, Lou and Reed have this encounter that happens that lands them in quite a precarious position. As a result, they are forced into matrimony in order to kind of hide up this scandal that would otherwise ruin Reed and the church's life. So Lou kind of lucks out there, but at the same time she's like, oh crap, I'm a witch living with a witch hunter and living in this kind of castle of witch hunters where if you use magic it has this smell, and so they have kind of been trained to recognize the smell, so Lou has to be very careful in whatever she does. However, Lou's past from fleeing her witch coven is kind of coming back to haunt her, and she's being hunted by her own coven, and so there's a lot of different things going on, and there's also this enemies to lovers romance between Lou and Reed that I really appreciated. I think that it was very well done, and it did not feel very rushed because you saw them beginning to trust each other over the course of this novel. I just loved the bickering that occurred between Lou and Reed. It was hilarious. Lou is, in this time, it's kind of like medieval-ish, where women are supposed to be, you know, they're supposed to carry a certain air about themselves and be proper, and Lou was raised as a witch. She doesn't really follow society's norms, and so she doesn't really give a second F. And so she does whatever she wants. She is so confident in herself, and she just has fun, and she's very crass, and she makes fun of Reed all the time, and their relationship as it forms is just so beautiful and heart-wrenching and hilarious, and you just cannot help but just love when they interact. Now, there is a sex scene in this, and it has been controversial for some people because this book is YA. It's YA. However, if you have read the A Court of Thorns and Roses series by Sarah J. Maas, if you have read Acromath, and you've read the sex scene in there, that is the equivalent to the sex scene that happens in Serpent and Dove. It is there, it is explicit, but not in the sense that I would actually consider it very smutty. It is more so just a sex scene that is explicit, but not in the sense that, you know, you have naming of parts or anything like that. Like, it's a YA sex scene that borders on new adult. I also really love the side characters in this. We have Coco, who is Lou's best friend, and then we have Ansel, who is Reed's kind of underling. And Coco is such an awesome female, and like Lou, she has also fled her coven, and the two of them kind of became friends in that sense. And Coco also is just such a fiercely loyal and protective friend, and I really loved her female friendship with Lou because it was a very positive female friendship, and it was based off of a very pure, fierce love that they have for one another. And then Ansel, oh my god, he is the cutest little bean in the entire world. Like, he is my new favorite little bean. Like, oh my god, he is so adorable and cute. Like, I can't even tell you guys how much I love him and cannot wait to see him in the second book. Like, he is such a sweetheart. You can't help but love him. Like, oh my god, pure bean, pure bean. If you guys have not read this yet, I highly recommend you pick it up. It came out this month in September, so yes. But okay, that is all 8 books that I have read in the month of August. I know that it is quite late that I'm putting this up, but you know what, that's life sometimes. My laptop broke in the beginning of September, if you guys knew that, and so it took around 2.5 weeks for me to get it back from the distribution center, so it was just kind of a whole shit show, but sometimes that's just what life is and you just gotta deal with it. But if you guys enjoyed this video, please hit the like button down below if you want to see more of me. Please subscribe to my channel, and until next time, thanks a bunch guys. Bye!